Today's recipe is a recipe that is actually one of my most popular recipes on my blog, believe it or not. The first time I posted it, I did a little video with my mom and I didn't realize how many people actually love making soji. I didn't also realize that a lot of people don't really know how to make it, and so when I did do that video, it was one of the longest videos that I shared in terms of it being short form. It was about 2 minutes and I had to split it into part 1 and part 2. So today I thought I'd share my very simple take on a lovely soji recipe. As you can see, it is just waiting to be digged into. It is indulgent, it is soft, it is easy to make, and if you follow my step-by-step guide, I promise you'll be able to achieve it. I know that a lot of people get clumpy soji. You get soji that maybe tastes like it's a little bit raw, but this is just a recipe that's super easy to follow. It's such a joy to make. If you love soji, you're gonna be making this over and over and over again, and I promise you, you know those old school gem recipes, this is one of those recipes that you're gonna want to save for generations to come, because it's not just easy to make, but with the tips that I share on how to make this lovely, rich, smooth, velvety, soft soji, you're going to, like I said, make it over and over again. And if you know somebody who messed up their first attempt on making soji, or you maybe know people who don't really know how to make soji, feel free to send them this recipe, because this is going to be the guide on how to make some lovely wedding soji. So I like to make my soji in a very shallow pot. I just think that it's a lot easier to manage when you're making the soji, especially when you are using a whisk and a spatula and a spoon. This pot of mine is a 30 centimeter pot. It is my AMC Gourmet Skillet. I love using it for, like frying sausages and to make chops chutney. So this pot is really, really shallow. You'll be able to see soon. I'm going to add some of my spices first, just to bloom the spices, because I wanted to release its aroma. So the first spice that I'm going to be adding is a quill of cinnamon. So a nice quill of cinnamon. And I'm just going to add that to the pot. It is currently on very low heat because I want to be able to manage the soji as I'm cooking it, and I don't want it to burn. And then I'm using 3 pods of cardamom pods, so 3 yelachi pods. So I'm going to add that in, and that's just going to release its aroma. And then whilst this is releasing, I am then going to work on my milk mixture for the soji. Let me pop this aside. So I have about 650 mLs to about 700 mLs of milk. You're just going to have to see how much you are going to need to use depending on where you stay because of the humidity. I'm then using this is about 200 grams of caster sugar. Now the thing about soji is that everyone has their own way of making soji, and you can make it with caster sugar, you can make it with brown sugar, you can make it, typically a lot of people use condensed milk as well, because it does add that richness to the soji and it's also going to sweeten the soji. But if you don't have a tin of condensed milk, then using normal white sugar or caster sugar does help. I prefer caster sugar because it dissolves a lot easier. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some food coloring. So I've got some egg yellow food coloring, and I'm just going to add about half a teaspoon of that to the milk mixture. And then I've got some saffron. So this saffron, quick story, is actually a gift from my mother-in-law. She bought it for me when she visited Turkey. The saffron smells absolutely amazing, and what I want to do is just bloom it with some water, and then that just allows the saffron to release all of its flavors, and then add it to the milk mixture. So just like a little bit of water, and you'll instantly start to see this beautiful yellow color start to pop, and then you want to just add that in. And then all that's left to do now is to just give this a whisk. Now that that's done, I'm going to set this aside, and then I'm going to move on to actually making the soji. Now I'm using about 1.5 cups of semolina. You can also use Taystee Wheat when you're making soji. It's just completely up to you. It depends what you have at home. So 1.5 cups, and I would say this would feed about 8 people, 8 to 10 people. Now I like to do this because I like to incorporate the yalachi and the cinnamon with the semolina, just to release its flavors into the semolina. And then once I'm done with this, I'm then just going to add some butter. So I don't want to toast the semolina. I'm not looking to toast it. I'm just looking to release some of the cinnamon and yalachi into the semolina. So there are a couple tips that I'd like to share with you when making soji, whether you're making soji for a prayer or for a dessert, or you're making some lovely wedding soji, is to have lots of patience and to be really, really quick. I know that's very contradictory, but try to have a lot of patience because it is a arm workout and you're going to be doing a lot of mixing, but at the same time, you also have to be really fast because otherwise you're going to get clumpy soji. So once this is, I would say, toasted, we're not looking for color on this, for about 1 to 2 minutes, I'm then going to add in my butter. And you can use, well, butter is going to make the soji very nice and rich, but you can also use margarine. It is not the end of the world. If you watch any of my videos, you know that I really like to cook with simplicity and what I have access to. And sometimes it's a great thing to improvise, but typically when you are making soji, you want to be able to use butter. It's just going to add that lovely richness to your soji, especially if you're making wedding soji. And I've just cubed up my butter. I'm using 200 grams of butter. So just under, if you are measuring and you don't have a scale, just under like a cup. You can hear already that the butter is starting to melt, and it's not on high, like I did mention to you, it's pretty low. So the next goal here, and believe it or not, I thought when I first shared my soji recipe, I thought that a lot of people just knew how to make this. And of course, a lot of moms, aunties, people who cook a lot do know how to make lovely soji, but there are a lot of people who look for recipes like this. And when I first shared my soji recipe, it's actually one of my most popular recipes on my blog, believe it or not. What we want to achieve here is we want to be able to mix the soji into the butter, and we are looking for like wet sand, like a wet sand texture. So just make sure that it's well incorporated and that you are using a spatula or a nice spoon to just scrape away from the edges. I want to cook this out for about 2 to 3 minutes because I don't want the soji to be like raw. So when you are melting the butter and you're mixing it in with the semolina, you want to essentially sort of like cook this out to prevent it from having that like raw soji taste. As you guys can see, it's looking like wet sand, and that's exactly the texture that we are looking for. And I did mention that you want to have lots of patience when you're making soji. So take your time because that arm workout is gonna be necessary and is gonna come through. But take your time because you don't want to. This is like a labor of love. You don't want to rush the process. This is something that you got to do like slow and steady to achieve a lovely velvety, nice soft soji texture. So what I'm busy doing here is I'm just moving some of my semolina mixture just to the sides of the skillet, just so that I have like a well to add in the milk. Whilst you are toasting the semolina with the butter, you do have the option of adding in your ground yalachi. You can do it at that point, or you can also do it when you are adding in the milk mixture. So remember, the milk mixture is just a little bit of food coloring, sugar, milk, and saffron. Some people do add egg to their soji, and it's completely optional. I personally have never done it, but I have tasted it with egg, and it does taste really amazing. It's more of like a custardy soji, so it's it really does add a lot of richness to the soji. Now I'm going to add about a third of this mixture, and this is where you have to be really quick when you're making soji, especially if you've never made it before. But also remember, if it is your first time or you're new to making this, you want to work on a very low heat so that you are able to manage the soji and also have a whisk on hand as well. So as you can hear, there's not a lot of bubbling, but you want to be able to just give this a quick mix and make sure that everything is well incorporated. And if you do this properly, and if it's on low heat, you're not going to get clumpy soji because it's going to be able to just dissolve into the soji. And I'm still using my spatula. I just prefer to use a spatula because you can just like press the soji down into the skillet. The moment it starts to pull away, that's your sign to add in some more milk. And then when we add the last bit of milk, it needs to be dried up. So you want to be able to make sure that it's pulling away from the edges and you have like a nice soji texture. This is going to ensure that the soji cooks properly. So just keep pressing in that. If you have a spoon or if you're using a spatula, you can see how easy it is to use a spatula. You're also getting rid of any lumps if there are any lumps. If you would like to add like a little bit extra food coloring, you can. I have noticed that every time I do make soji, that by the time you're done making your soji, the end product, you are going to notice that it is going to darken slightly. So just bear that in mind because we're still adding the milk to it. And yeah, as you guys can see, the soji is pulling away from the sides very nicely. And that's the texture that we're looking for. It's nice and creamy. And I'm going to add the last bit of milk and then just allow it to thicken up. See how nice and pleasurable it is to cook this on low heat because you have control over the texture. So we're just going to add the last bit of milk. So I'd say, about 600 to 700 milliliters. So just under 3 cups of milk, like 2.5 cups if you're using a measuring cup. There are a lot of people that also make soji like this and then they transfer it into a casserole dish and then they finish it off in the oven. Now, because I'm using a skillet and it's a stainless steel pot, it's my AMC pots, these pots actually go really well into the oven. So you can do a lot of pot roasts. If you want to make your chops in the oven or if you want to do like a roast chicken in this pot, because it's so nice and shallow, you can place the chicken in, you can butterfly it, and then you can just add some potatoes and pop it into the oven. The only thing that you're not allowed to do is if you are adding your lid, right? And if you want to insulate the moisture, is you're not allowed to add the lid with the AMC knob. So what you're going to want to do here is you want to just unscrew it and then add the lid on just so that it doesn't melt. And you can finish the soji off as well. But once again, it just depends on the time that you have. I personally prefer doing it like this because it's just so much easier. And like I said, I have control over the texture. And once it is lump-free, then you can just add it into the oven and cook it for about like on 160 to 170 for about, I'd say about 15 minutes. And then you can just finish off with however you like your soji. So at this point, you can see that the soji is getting much thicker and it is pulling away from the skillet, the sides of the skillet. And that's exactly what you're looking for. You want it to get nice and thick, just to the preferred texture. And I'm making wedding soji, like I did mention. So I want it to be nice and soft and silky and rich and have that like velvety texture. I'm not looking for a clumpy soji texture. You can also notice that the color, as I did say, would darken. So remember, when you're adding in the food coloring, a little does go a long way. Look how beautiful the texture is, as you guys can see. This is just cooking soji on really low heat. The skillet is doing the things here. And this is exactly what you're looking for. Nice, soft, velvety soji. I'm like so impressed with this. Look at that. And remember, we added a little bit of heat to the gas. So I'm just gonna lower that very, very low. And that is it. The soji is now done. Now there's a number of different ways that you can serve this, right? You can serve this with some colored almonds, just as is. Of course, you guys know everything is about presentation when I cook, and everything is about you eat with your eyes first. So I love to be really indulgent when it comes to soji. In fact, when I go to a wedding and when they serve the soji, you know that like cream that sits on the top? That's me. I'm the person that goes for that. So you can add some cream. I will give you a tip when you're adding in the cream, right? So don't use normal fresh cream, use tin cream. It's a lot thicker and it sits well on the soji. You could add colored almonds. I've seen someone add, my auntie who's actually a caterer, does a beautiful soji with red almond flakes. It's just so beautiful and classy. You can do that, or you can do multicolored, which is what we're going to be doing today. You can also just add plain almonds. You can also add some walnuts as well. So yeah, that is it. And then just look at this texture. It's like glossy. You can see the saffron strands. It's just so beautiful. And that is the soji done. And the skillet is just such a dream to work with, like in terms of size, and it's just perfect for desserts like this. And then I'm going to decorate it with the cream and with the almonds. So now for the best part, the cream. I did say to you guys, you want to use tin cream. It's just like so much thicker, as you guys can see. And I'm probably going to add about maybe like about a third of a cup of the cream. Oh, this looks so good. It smells really amazing as well. And you know the thing about soji is that you really can make this your own. You can add as much sugar or condensed milk as you like. You can even add cream in the milk mixture. Just depends how rich you want it to be. I just like to keep this recipe very simple and classic, and this is pretty much how I was taught. And yeah, it works for me. I've never really had failed soji, which is a good thing. I've got some colored almonds here, so you can either color them, but nowadays you can get them from like any spice shops. I'm just going to add some colored almonds. And you know what's so beautiful about colored almonds is it really just adds that beautiful pop of color. And when you look at soji, you know that you are seeing, like with extra cream and almonds, you know that you're seeing a good soji, because whoever made it like took time to put in the effort to make it look so bougie. Yeah, guys, and that is it. My take on soji. There is one more thing. Of course, I said, you know, I am a bit bougie. There is one more thing that I like to do, keeping with the bouginess, is I just like to take a little bit of gold foil and just pop it onto the soji in like a few places so that it adds a little bit of drama and makes it look even prettier. So just a few pieces, not necessary, but you know, like if you are serving, my mom did catering for a number of years, and she did a lot of corporate catering. And the one thing that she did do, especially coming from a family who does do a lot of catering, the one thing that she always instilled in me, like when it comes to making anything, is like to garnish and to make things look really presentable. And you can just see by just adding a little bit of foil to the soji, you can just see how beautiful it makes it look. So not a lot, just a few pieces, and I'm going to be done. That one wants to fall here, so we'll let it fall here. A few last pieces, and that is it. And there you have it, my very simple take on how to make soji. Remember, a few tips if you are going to be making soji. Try use a shallow like skillet. I did mention to you guys that I'm using this is my 30 centimeter, and it makes about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of soji really well. And this should feed at least 8 to 10 people. And this is just my basic take on how to make soji. You can elevate it, like I did mention, multiple different ways. But use this recipe, like I said, 8 to 10 people, depending. I'm working like on maybe like a scoop and a half, so definitely more. You'll definitely get more than 8 scoops here. But you know, some people really do love their soji. So you can always take the recipe that's going to be in the description box below, and you can always multiply it by as many guests that you need to feed. And yeah, that's my simple take on soji. I hope you guys enjoy, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below how you like your soji.